Hi folks, welcome to this video on the English public schools. Now, I've written at the top here, post-1850 Industrial Revolution, influence of the public schools. Watch this video first, the video I've done about post-1850, post-industrial revolution. Otherwise, this won't make sense or too much sense what you're about to watch. What we're looking at here is how the public schools influence the development of sport alongside the development of the Industrial Revolution. Now, the first thing to make clear is that even though they're called public schools, they are not for the public. Public schools are these kind of buildings. They are actually private schools, the exact opposite of public, but they were the only schools at the time in this era and for hundreds of years before. So that's why they were called public schools. There wasn't any other form of school. They're still in existence today. Eton, Harrow, St Paul's, Rugby, Winchester, Merchant Taylors, these are all exclusive schools. And as now they were for the upper classes only, they are and were fee paying and very expensive. They are and were boarding schools, so students went there and stayed there for months at a time. And they were there back in the day, but also I dare say today, to educate the future leaders of society. So these were very, very exclusive schools. So for the upper classes, mainly for boys at the start, girls were later allowed. But early 1800s, so pre-industrial revolution, schools were against sport. It was viewed as a waste of time and time that should be spent on studying instead of mucking around playing sport. And there wasn't proper sport, really. If you think back to what we've said in previous videos, there was a bit of, fox hunting, shooting, real tennis, but no, like proper sports. The only other sports were mob games, and they were for the working classes, certainly not for the upper classes and the future leaders of society. However, 1850s onwards, sports were then encouraged at schools such as this with the upper classes as a form of controlling the boys in their spare time. Now, I've written something here, the fagging system always raises a smile. Okay, so what is the fagging system, or what was the fagging system? Well, I don't know why, but back in this era, in the, even before the 1800s, but certainly back around this era, if you were a 16 to 18-year-old boy studying at these schools, you were called a prefect. I've not misspelled perfect. I know my spelling has been atrocious on videos, but you were called a prefect. If you were under 16s, you were called a fag. Okay, so that was the system. The fagging system was that the prefects used to use the fags as servants, and they used to bully them quite badly. This wasn't just a case of, oh, fetch me this and fetch me that. There was quite a lot of beatings going on. It was, obviously parental disapproval, but it was seen as a way of preparing the boys for later on in life and teaching them a respect for order and respect for elders, so that when they became elder, they were in a better position to lead society, by a strong hand and things like that. However, parents began to moan so badly that they threatened to move their children to other schools. Why should the schools be worried about that? Because the schools are fee paying. If I move my child somewhere else, that school is not getting as much money. So they realised something had to be done, a better way to occupy the boys' mind, and that's why they started to encourage sports. Now, here's a key figure about that reform. This is a guy called Thomas Arnold, and he was headmaster of a rugby public school in the mid-1800s. Rugby school where the rules of rugby were put down, okay? Now, he wanted his students to be moral gentlemen, so to have good morals, good ethics. So he promoted regulated sport in order to revise the fagging system. So what I mean by that is, instead of the prefects bullying the fags, we use sport as a way of controlling the boys, still with the elders being respected by the younger boys, but sport as a tool to do that. He was one who developed the house system. So if you've had a house system at your school or your college, they are still common today. He's the guy who brought that in to respect playing sport and representing your house or your school or something like that. So the prefect organise and develop sport for themselves and the fags. So, there's not so much bullying going on, but they're still ordering around, and you're playing in this team, you're playing this position. So the prefects are still feeling like, I'm the one giving the commands, I'm the one giving the orders, but there's less bullying going on. Now, this was very common at the time and still common today. Religion was very, very big in society during this time, and he was a very big religious man, was Thomas Arnold. And he promoted this idea of muscular Christianity, which, can be summed up by this: a healthy body and a healthy mind to serve God. So he wanted them to be healthy physically, but he also wanted them to be healthy morally and ethically as well. So and he was the guy who created the link between sports, morals, and ethics. And so the other concept he brought in as a result was this idea of athleticism linked to muscular Christianity. combination of physical endeavour, i.e. you play hard, but also moral integrity, you play fair. Fair play and sportsmanship. So playing hard gives you the healthy body. Playing fair gives you the healthy mind in order to best serve God. And this was the idea of athleticism, physical endeavour and moral integrity. But like we said, there wasn't much choice for sport back at these times. It was like, your really upper class fox hunting, things like that, or it was your mob games. So what they did was, in order to keep the boys on site all together and confined to one space so you can watch them and make sure there isn't any bullying and anything going on. And so you're developing good morals, so you're developing fair play and sportsmanship. The public school boys took the mob games of the working classes, like mob football, and gave them rules, i.e. fixed numbers, 11 aside, 13 aside, 15 aside. Gave positions in there, the introduction of goalkeepers, forwards, defenders, things like that. Some rules were brought in where we're only allowed to kick, so football started to get developed. Like I said, Thomas Arnold was head of rugby school. So there, handling only came in as a rule, which leads to the rules of rugby. Time limits are brought in. Space limits. So, we're playing on a fixed area in the middle of the school, on a pitch, on a field. And this whole idea of giving these mob games proper rules was called rational recreation. And this is what the public schools are famed for all over the world. These were the boys who put down rules for the vast majority of sports that you see worldwide today. So we're starting to see the introduction of sport, and we're starting to see the introduction of sports with rules and regulations. Now, like I said, remember, this is going on at the same time as the Industrial Revolution is taking place. And we're going to come to the link to that in a minute. But you might be thinking, well, I think I said at the start, there were 9 public schools. So you've got 9 public schools, no telephones, no internet, nothing like that. So obviously these 9 schools are not coming up with the same sets of rules at each school. They're coming up with their own individual rules. And if each school's got their own different rules, you can't have fixtures outside of school. You can play fixtures within your own school, but not outside of school. So this is where the Oxford universities come in. Oxford and Cambridge. Now, why are these the 2 most famous universities in the world, but certainly in this country? It's because they're the 2 oldest. Back in this era, the 1800s, they were the only 2 universities. Why? Because there's only 9 schools. So you haven't got that many students graduating each year. And these 9 schools are for the upper classes. There's only the upper classes that are going to Oxford and Cambridge universities. So the public school boys move on to either Oxford or Cambridge University when they've left public school. Now, these boys take the sports they've developed with them. So you've got boys from rugby going to Cambridge University with boys from Charterhouse and Merchant Taylors and places like this. They cannot organise leagues, fixtures or tournaments with so many different rules. Each school's got its own set of rules. We do a handling game where we do a kicking game. We play with 11 aside where we play with 18 aside. We play on this size pitch where we play on this size pitch. So it can't take place. So what happens is these boys come together and they do something called codification. They codify the rules, which is like rational recreation, but it's refining the rules and giving fixed rules. And it's why I've got this picture on here. It's often called a melting pot. So the individual school rules were put into a melting pot, i.e. a hypothetical, metaphorical melting pot, and the best, most appropriate, most suitable rules were selected. So then you start to get proper set down rules for proper set down sports. And as a result, these public school boys also decided to set up national governing bodies, so NGBs to govern these sports. So the FA was developed at Oxford and Cambridge. The RFU was set up at Oxford or Cambridge. The Lawn Tennis Association was set up at Oxford or Cambridge. And they were all set up by ex-public school boys, upper-class elite people. And the national governing bodies run by these upper-class people can now oversee and govern these sports and look after them. So once we've got codification, we can then have fixtures between schools and universities. We can then have leagues and tournaments because now everybody's playing by the same set of rules. And obviously, like I said, this didn't happen within a month. This happened over months and years. And don't forget, sports these days are still being recodified. We're still bringing in new rules, but this is where it first happened. This is where the laws of these sports were first laid down. Now, to create the link with the Industrial Revolution, right? The sports were codified by the upper classes, the rich elite, the public school boys who went on to Oxford or Cambridge. So they put amateur ideals into these sports. No payment, fair play, honour, respect, things like that. So they made them very much amateur. National governing bodies were set up and run by the upper classes. So again, the rules of the national governing bodies: amateur, no payment, for honour, fair play, respect, all athleticism, muscular Christianity, all that stuff. So as a result, you stop entirely or vastly limit the working classes' access to sport in order to protect the sports and keep them just for the upper classes. I'm a public school boy. I'm been to Oxford and Cambridge. I developed this sport. I am not going to pass it on to the peasants who are way below me. That was the attitude. Now, when you've got pre-industrial Britain, no industrial revolution, where the country's spread out over a wide population, that it's very easy to keep the sports for yourselves. But when the industrial revolution comes along and everybody moves to the towns and cities, and you see lots of sports taking, ex-public school boys playing fixtures in towns and cities, you get the working classes watching and looking and going, I'd like to play that. I'd like to do that. So the Industrial Revolution starts to change the attitude. As we bring in that Education Act that I spoke about, 1870, where it's education for all, the working classes are starting to get better educated, and you're starting to get a better educated society, which means that they can understand a few more of these difficult rules, but also at these schools, they're starting to get a little bit of access and they're starting to play some of these sports themselves that they're seeing the upper classes do. We get the emancipation of women, as I've mentioned before. So women are getting more rights. As English and British men are going off to fight in wars and getting killed, women, as I've mentioned in the other video, are becoming more prominent in society. They're becoming educated, but they're getting more rights and more access to sport as well. As I said to you before, these public school boys are going to set up work teams. So yes, they want to keep the sports for themselves, but then they're going to set up work teams to get a fitter, healthier workforce who have got better teamwork and better communication. Well, that means letting them play sport, letting them play football, letting them play rugby, so setting up little works teams and works leagues. Now look at the nickname of some sports teams. Not all of them, not the ones that have animals, but look at some of the nicknames. Arsenal, the Gunners. Why they're called the Gunners? Because they are a former ammunitions manufacturers. That's why they're called the Gunners. West Ham, the Hammers, or sometimes even known as the Irons, as a Scunthorpe, because they're former steelworks and ironworks football teams. Stoke City, the Potters, they're a former pottery football team. There are a lot of professional clubs that we see today have their origins in works teams, but also church teams. Now that more people are living in cities due to the Industrial Revolution, more people are going to churches and churches are getting bigger. And because of the idea of muscular Christianity, healthy body, healthy mind to serve God, churches are now putting on Sunday school teams to get people fitter. Now, again, if you look at Everton, they started life as St. Domingo's Roman Catholic Church Sunday school team. So many pro clubs also have origins in church teams as well. We're also getting better transport, as we've said, in terms of like getting teams and spectators to and from fixtures. We said about a half-day Saturday to play fixtures. We said about more money, slightly better pay, slightly more leisure time. So all these, due to the Industrial Revolution, all these things are coming together alongside what the public school boys did. Now, it's just coincidental that these things were taking place at around about the same time, but it all leads to a big explosion in sport in this country in this era, 1850 onwards. So those two videos go really, really well together. So that's the influence, particularly of the public schools in the development of sport today. Hope you found this video useful, folks.